Good afternoon, friends. Stephen Benoon with Israeli News Live on our Patreon channel, and we're airing this first here so that our folks there that have the early release get a chance to view this before we go public with this broadcast here. And we're talking today about Palantir, this AI company that has really grown some unbelievable tentacles, kind of like an octopus in every direction. No doubt, maybe could have been used for some very good purposes, but it has definitely taken on a military campaign. Of course, it was first funded by the CIA and then later other agencies, starting in the United States and then moving overseas to many other countries, including Ukraine and Israel. This company's technology, bringing together all social media platforms, things of that nature there, really has revolutionized war in a very unusual way. As a result, there are many that believe that this company, Palantir, almost is an invasion of privacy. It's an invasion of stalking private citizens, and it's gone beyond just military means. And I think I can prove my argument sufficiently. There's a number of sources out there, media, etc., but it also controls that. It controls the media platforms. It controls the censorship. This tool has been used to weaponize and give the narrative to those that want the narrative. One of the co-founders of this company knew that Donald Trump would be president before he was even elected. Of course, they support Trump. Many of their former employees are in his administration as well, high-ranking positions. So we're going to get into this because I ran across a very interesting video. I watched it, 16 minutes long. And a guy that did, he had one former employee, kind of a whistleblower about the company's ethic policies. And of course, he didn't leave the company because of that. But nonetheless, he does showcase the real concerns that are going on. And of course, since Israel's war on Hamas began, as a result of Hamas, I would say, given unfettered access to small villages around their fence line there without intervention or protection of those individuals when Israel could have been protecting them, they have really utilized this platform. Anyway, let's get into this here. Palantir, this is on The Guardian, the special ops tech giant that wields as much real-world power as Google. And their crime is that they merely thought about it, is what the article states here. Palantir, the CIA-backed startup, is Minority Report come true. It is all-powerful, yet no one knows it even exists. Let me blow this up so we can see this better on the screen. Palantir does not have an office. It has a skiff on the back street of Palo Alto, California. Palantir's defense system include advanced biometrics and walls impenetrable to radio waves, phone signal, or internet. Its data storage is blockchain. It cannot be accessed by merely sophisticated hacking. It requires digital passcodes held by dozens of independent parties whose identities are themselves protected by blockchain. They've likened it to several different programs, especially those that use crystal balls like the Lord of the Rings, other things like that. Palantir watches everything you do and predicts what you will do next in order to stop it. Now, what I've been doing is since Deborah Tavares, who I interview and basically have created a platform to be able to get her message out to the world. Deborah is amazing at searching documentation to back what she says. And on her pre-crime that she spoke about in our recent interview, this video here is what I came across when she talked about Palantir. And so I am starting to dig deeper into those areas. Not to say that Deborah probably doesn't already have all that knowledge, but we're more limited in scope when we do our videos because we're covering a broad range of these topics. So I'm looking at each one of these individually. So anyway, let's go back to this. As of 2013, its client list included the CIA, the FBI, NSA, the Center of Disease Control. I'm not going to say a lot about that because you know why. The Marine Corps, the Air Force, Special Operations Command, West Point, and your favorite organization, the IRS. I can just see it now. They can help target you for audit. Up to 50% of its businesses is with the public sector, and QTEL, the CIA's venture arm, was an early investor. Bernie Madoff was in prison with the help of Palantir. As you can see, Bernie there on the left side there, child trafficker, and what they refer to as subversives, but it is all done using prediction. In Iraq, the Pentagon used Palantir software to track patterns in roadside bomb deployment and worked out garage door openers were being used as remote detonators by predicting it. That's what they want to bring the world to begin with, is pre-crime. Like in the movie there, that I think that's the one up here at the top, where Peter Thiel, he's the creator of this. The Baghdad mining firm honed its crime predicting techniques against insurgents in Iraq. The same methods are now being sold to police departments. Will they inflame already tense relationships between the public and the police? And we know that the movie in 2002, Minority Report, adaptation of Philip K. Dick's novel, Tom Cruise plays a police officer in the LAPD pre-crime unit using premonitions of sentiment mutants called precogs. And if you've never seen that movie, if you really want to get an idea of what this is about, that's an excellent idea. And of course, he discovers in this movie that this is really becoming very evil, and then he gets framed as well. Now, I've done, besides all the documentation that I'm going to be sharing with you, I've done a tremendous amount of research because we're going to get into the side where they're connected to Israel, and it is obvious they're using it to track, manipulate, and control social media. We know this for a fact, but I believe that they're targeting people in their pre-crime idea to determine not that there's a crime committed, but that these people could ultimately cause problems for their NWO. It'll probably still get picked up by the bots. New World Order, let's just say it. Palantir does not just provide the Pentagon with a machine for global surveillance and the data efficiency fighting of a war, it runs Wall Street too. Palantir is exactly what it says it is, a giant digital eye like Saruman's Sea Stone in The Lord of the Rings. However, when Cruz's character begins to question the morality of what he is doing, his superiors detect a threat to the entire pre-crime program. In order to get rid of him, Cruz is framed for a murder by altering the data of his thought history. In the final showdown with his boss, it is explained to Cruz that sometimes the numbers need to lie to greater good of society. Think about that for just a moment, right? Minority Report is set in 2054, but Palantir is putting pre-crime into operation now. The Los Angeles Police Department used Palantir to predict who will commit a crime by swooping Minority Report style on suspects. And Palantir calls its work with the LAPD improving situation awareness and is responding into crime in real time. When I look at all this, and I'm going to share even more information with you as we go along, I cannot help but believe that Palantir very well could have been used to target our family. Those of you that know the case with Dr. Carrie Madej, and this lethal injection that was done to our family, 21 mils of peroxide, I was given inside information that we were targeted because of exposing the Noahide laws. And of course, they were really trying to keep it suppressed to make it look like it's nothing more than the ice cream bill, right? But the problem is, in our more recent videos, which I've been tackling a lot by myself on this, my wife is the brains behind it all. But I believe that we were targeted to make sure that she could not have that ability. Either take her out, which my father-in-law suffered his death because of this, in my opinion, or at least cause so much damage to where they could get it all passed without you ever knowing about it, without anyone exposing their intention. Palantir is able to go across the internet and see, and not only that, predict. We were such, with my wife and I working together and her being the real brains behind it all. And that's what I was told too. They knew she was the brains behind it all. And oddly enough, another odd thing that was said to me is that they felt if she was out of the picture, I probably would not be able to carry it on. That's predictive programming. So until my wife is fully able to be back in the saddle to make this fight, you might want to rethink your predictive programming. I want to play a little clip here, and I got several clips we will be playing, but we're going to be moving forward in proof that I'm going to share with you. Let's look at the opening of this documentary here that was done by More Perfect Union. The guy that put this together, he did an amazing job in 16 minutes and 31 seconds. Listen in.
As an employer that also owns extremely lethal technologies and surveillance technologies that are highly invasive and used in war zones is something else entirely.
It's 2025. We're all kind of used to government surveillance. The idea that we're all being watched all the time and don't own our own personal data has become normalized. We're also used to the military spending vast amounts of our money on just a few giant defense contractors. But one tech company wants to change both of those things
and become the ultimate military contractor and the ultimate arbiter of all of our data.
And there we go right there. I'll play this one clip here. This is the founder. Listen for one moment.
Palantir is here to disrupt and make the institutions we partner with the very best in the world, and when it's necessary, to scare enemies and on occasion kill them.
Check out Palantir shares.
On occasion kill them. Alex Karp, founder of this company, and it is an amazing company. It's an amazing feat that they have pulled off. But I think that this guy here, Mr. Alex Karp, has figured out like what China's already mastered. But they've taken it a step further. How tech giants turned Ukraine into an AI war lab. And I've got about 20 pages of notes that I have done. I actually computer generated my notes here, or printed them out, I should say, putting everything together to make this report. Palantir Technologies, it is a U.S.-based data analytics surveillance company. It's founded in 2003, originally funded by the CIA's venture capital arm, In-Q-Tel. While Palantir's operations are global, the company has quietly developed deep ties with Israel. That is what I was looking for, particularly in the intelligence, military operations, and predictive policing. Now, we already see this with the LAPD, just like in the movie. The LAPD is the one that had that technology. Well, in real time, it makes you wonder sometimes, too. The movie was probably designed knowing what was coming. For Israel itself, well, I'll tell you what, let's get into Ukraine a little bit. How tech giants turned Ukraine into an AI war lab. This is Time Magazine's article. I want to get the ox before the cart here. Becoming the first leader of a major Western company to meet the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky since Russian invasion 3 months earlier over a round of espressos, Alex Karp, the guy you saw here on the video a second ago, told Zelensky that he was ready to open an office in Kiev and deploy Palantir data and artificial intelligence software to support Ukraine's defense. Karp believed they could team up in ways that allowed David to beat the modern-day Goliath. Now, I want you to stop for just a moment to think about something. Let me pull it up. I didn't do this at the beginning, and so I want to pull this up for you, and I'll go to Yandex because it's easier to find the guy this way. Yeah, Barabbas is really, truly the Palantir of today. It is the murderer set free, right? But that's actually not who I'm looking for. Eduardo Hudo. All right, here we go right here. Edward Hudo in Henry Macau's article that he wrote about this man right here. This is Eduardo Hudo. Hudos, actually, I guess is the way you pronounce his name. It is in this article here, and I don't know, it's not highlighted any longer. The Ukrainians would think, he's quoting now from a recorded statement by Menachem Schneerson. The Ukrainians would think that they are fighting against the expansion of Russia and struggling for their independence. They will think that they have finally gained their freedom while becoming fully subdued by us. The same will be the thought by the Russians as they are defending their national interests and return their lands illegally taken from them, and so on. That's what they've intended to do. Looking back in history, it must be admitted that these lands are the ancient ancestral lands of the Jewish Khazaria, that is Israel, captured by Kiev and Rus, the ancient state of Russia, with the capital of Kiev in the 10th century. The Slavs are temporary guests on these lands and are subject to eviction. All right? That's what they say. They're subject to eviction. We will return this territory and build the great Khazaria and the Jewish state on these fertile lands the same way as 50 years ago we created Israel. All right, squeezing the Palestinians out, and the Israelis were partially relocated here, and we will drive Slavic cattle out of the north and beyond Moscow. Okay, why is this being said here? Is this exactly what Palantir was doing in Ukraine? Now, Palantir, according to this right here, they claimed, Karp says, believe they could team up in ways that allowed David to beat modern-day Goliath. I want you to think about the statement that he made here for a moment. Now, who made that statement? Mr. Karp. Who's Mr. Karp? Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir Technologies. He's teaming up with Zelensky to defeat Goliath. Goliath was a Philistine. The Philistines lived basically same place Gaza is located in Israel. In other words, they were amongst the very Israelites that were occupying that land some 2,500 years ago. So when he says that they're teaming up in ways that allow David to beat the modern-day Goliath, in their opinion, the modern-day Goliath is not just the Russians, it's the Slavic peoples that are in the land of Ukraine. They're wanting to exterminate the Slavic people. The Christians of both West and East. And even they've used their own Russian Orthodox against the Catholic Orthodox in the country to turn against one another, to kill one another. You've fallen for a technology giant's work to overturn what's going on. So that's what Ukraine has become. And that technology, because it is so powerful that it is able to identify right down to the individuals, Palantir knew who were those that oppose the Ukrainian quest for what they're doing inside of their country as well. I wouldn't be a bit surprised that that's how they locate all of those that don't want to go fight in this war. They find out who they are through the social media connections that they have been able to do, track them down, and make sure that the Gestapo working in Ukraine picks them up, takes them to the front line, and they just disappear. Think about it, right? So let's take a look at another part here. And this is getting more into how the company began. We're going to go to 2 minutes and 56 seconds into here. And you're going to find some very interesting.
Was growing fast and making people in a once obscure industry very, very rich, very, very quickly. Like the founders and executives at PayPal, known as the PayPal Mafia. Elon Musk, Reid Hoffman, the LinkedIn guy, and Peter Thiel. When PayPal was sold, Thiel had millions of dollars burning a hole in his pocket and an idea. PayPal had developed systems for detecting fraud and crimes on the platform. What if they could use similar thinking to analyze the world at large? So Thiel pulled from his network to build out a new company. One of the first hires was Thiel's Stanford Law School roommate, Alex Karp, who'd gone on after Stanford to get a PhD in not business or computer science or engineering, but neoclassical social theory. They named the company Palantir, after the Palantiri from J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings.
In Lord of the Rings, a Palantir stone is a magical object that allows its users to predict the future or to see what's going on in a remote location.
It was originally created by the elves. It was meant to be used for good purposes. It is potentially a very dangerous technology. It's very powerful.
And there you have it. Very powerful, very dangerous technology is exactly what it was for. Now, but the thing is, though, is if you look at what else is said in here in 4 minutes, 45 seconds into the video, is something that Mr. Karp says in this interview here.
Did your company helped to track and kill Osama bin Laden?
You know, we can never. I'll tell you, the closest thing to an answer is when you look at when you open the paper and look in the news about these kind of things, there's a 2/3 chance, depending on the country involved, that somehow my company was involved.
Fundamentally, the mission that is pushed to employees is that we're solving the world's hardest problems and supporting Western institutions. That is the main driver of sort of this militaristic culture that is developed inside of Palantir.
If you do not feel comfortable supporting the legitimate efforts of America and its allies in the context of war,
here it comes.
Don't join Palantir.
This entire message of like, we are the most lethal, we are the most able to surveil and process large amounts of data.
You have created the system which you call kill chain.
Privately. Public.
Privately. Not only have they created it, but they do it with impunity. Or maybe no impunity. Without regards to life, which brings me to a lot of other questions as well. Then we have Thiel's Palantir dumped by the Norwegian investors over the work for Israel. Because not only is it the CIA, the NSA, all the intelligence, the militaries of the United States that are using Palantir, but then Ukraine, Zelensky was brought involved. And as I mentioned, I think it was to take and eliminate, like Edward Houdot said, the Slavic people, the Goliath that they consider to be in the land. Well, the Norwegians took a little different approach with this when they began to see that Israel would become the next frontier after, or allegedly after October the 7th. In London, Oslo, on October the 25th, Reuters published here, one of the Nordic region's largest investors has sold its holdings in Palantir Technologies because of concerns that the U.S. data firm's work for Israel might put the asset manager at risk of violating international humanitarian law and human rights. Well, God bless that company in Norway for having the courage to stand up and make that. But it's not going to slow down Palantir, not even in the slightest bit. So Israel becomes the next big investor. What is Palantir doing in Israel, says the Globe's article here. So in this article here, U.S.-based AI company, which plays a prominent role in Ukraine's war with Russia, has an agreement with the Defense Ministry by the IDF military intelligence declined its services. But military intelligence declined its services? Or did they? In recent years, Palantir has become one of the most intriguing contractors of Israel's security forces. The fact of such cooperation is no secret. Immediately after his appearance at the university, Karp traveled to the military headquarters in Tel Aviv, where he signed an upgraded agreement with the Ministry of Defense and was even photographed with Danny Gold, head of the Israeli Directorate of the Defense Research and Development, DDR&D, who became well known as the manager of the development of the Iron Dome missile defense system. Just what is Palantir doing in Israel's defense establishment? None of the parties would elaborate. Last summer, however, the company did allow the reporter for Time magazine a peep into the offices in London from which the company fulfills an important role in the war in Ukraine. Well, maybe that would explain why London-based Royal Air Force planes are often seen flying out of Cyprus or flying from London to Cyprus and then doing intel gathering over Israel's entire border. How many of you may not remember some of that? Let's take a quick peek at that. I've actually seen these articles quite a bit over here on X. Let's see here. The IAF. Secret flights, Israel. Here we go, right here. Yesterday, a British, this is back in December of last year, though, R-1 Shadow spy plane collecting intelligence for Israel took off from the UK base on Cyprus. It turned its transponder off just before it went over the West Bank. It later landed in Amman, Jordan. First time I've seen this. Total time of 5.5 hours. Interesting, isn't it? So, do we have any later things? That's just the way I'm looking at it. You know, there's no telling what all you might find. Wait, let's see. So, start seeing more type things out there like that. Prime Minister Mustafa. Here we go right here. Daily spy flights over Gaza from the RAF on Cyprus. Keir Starmer is sending a Typhoon fighter jet over Israel every day from the same base. It disappears over Jordan for 4 hours, and departure arrival is not logged. So there's constantly those types of surveillances going on, and you can't help but ask yourself the question is, what are they doing? What is really going on? According to Business and Human Rights Resource Center, Palantir allegedly supplying Israel with AI tools amid Israel's war in Gaza. And keep in mind, as I'm doing this, sharing this with you, imagine what they're doing here in the United States then. Our products have been in great demand, Palantir Chief Executive Office Alex Karp said in an interview in Tel Aviv. We have begun supplying different products that we supplied before the start of the war, he said, declining to comment on which technologies were being offered. Karp also has been outspoken in support of Israel, defended the military campaign. Still, he said there was some pushback within the company over its backing of Israel in the war, and they did, and he does say that publicly. We're not a monoculture. There are people who disagree with our decisions everywhere, especially our decisions to support Israel, he said. They vocally disagree with it, and their voices are heard, and we are moving forward with our support of Israel. And as some people have said right inside of their very places there that they're speaking at, the genocide. Israel reportedly uses Palantir's technology in military operations, especially for identifying high-value targets in Gaza and the West Bank, supporting preemptive strikes by predicting movement and affiliations of individuals, integrating data from drones, satellites, and human intelligence to generate real-time battlefield decisions. There are border and occupational surveillances in the context of the Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories. Palantir's tools help track the movement and communicate of entire populations. Critics argue this reinforces apartheid-style surveillance, where predictive analytics are used not just to stop attacks, but to preemptively suppress political dissent or resistance. Palantir may also assist in Israeli agencies in cyber defense, identifying potential vulnerabilities in infrastructure or managing data security threats, especially in times of heightened regional conflict. Ethical concerns. The critics have accused Palantir of enabling human rights abuses by supporting surveillance that leads to the extrajudicial killings or collective punishment. That's what I'm looking at as well. Due to the secrecy around the defense contracts, full details of their Israeli operations remain classified or undisclosed. It's an AI-driven warfare is really what it comes down to being. Palantir increasingly integrates AI into its platform, raising alarms about algorithm bias and life or death decisions. But the problem is, one of my biggest concerns is that they are also using this AI system to be able to track what I would call anti-Semites. So, responsible statecraft also reports here. The trouble with doing business with Israel or a foreign government is you can't say anything when they're doing terrible things with technology that you may or may not have sold to them or hope to sell to them or hope to sell in your own country. There you go right there. Openly acknowledging that. Such was the case with Peter Thiel, co-founder of Palantir Technologies, in this recently surfaced video talking to Cambridge Union back in May. See him stumble and stutter, but by the time when asked what he thought about the use of artificial intelligence by Israeli military in targeting program called Lavender, which we know has been responsible for the deaths of untold number of innocent Palestinians on October the 7th. And this is what he says in the video. Look again. I'm not. He does a lot of stumbling in that video there. I think I have that up already. No, that's a different one there. That's a different one. Let me just see if I can play it right out of here real quick.
Supposed to study as an undergraduate, all of the all of the specific verticals one could have. So I think, I think nuclear power has dangers attached with it, but surely, the extremely heavy-handed regulation, we're really optimistic. I don't know. I certainly think that, I don't want to be extremely pessimistic. This is probably one place I would be inclined to think that, the die is rather cast at this point, and that in some sense there have been, many decades of, somewhat misdirected decisions. There are all these things that I would, I don't know, there's all this advice I would give. There are all these, conservative politicians I've talked to over the years. It's very difficult. You can't convince them of anything. They were wrong about China. They were confused on immigration. There was a way for older people, property-owning older people, to save for the retirement, because it's just the housing conversation that I've had with.
The way this is going to work is.
As his vice.
If you'd like.
The upcoming presidential elections. You mentioned
Here we go.
Be supporting Donald Trump. Would that change if he selected J.D. Vance as his vice presidential candidate?
Man, I'm always tempted to go back. I am so determined to try to stay out of it, but I think. I'm not going to make an announcement of my political intentions here at Cambridge today. So, I think Trump will win. I think.
Sorry.
For lack of desire to do so, do what it deems right and necessary.
And
I think is genocide, or even to Dresdenize the crime gets committed, and so I keep thinking that this genocide chant, and again I don't like to just psychologically reduce the people who disagree with me, be so psychologically reductionist, but it just feels like some kind of a projection where the people who chant it are themselves complicit in this, and this I don't think this does not mean that Israel has a right to commit genocide, or even to Dresdenize Gaza and firebomb them to smithereens. I don't think Israel is doing that, but I do think the sort of extreme nature of the context puts me in a place where I'm more on the pro-Israel side, and I think Israel should have fairly broad latitude to do what it deems right and necessary.
And with that, we'll move on to
And that's just sad in itself. The leaders of this company are definitely pro-Israel, and one of his statements that I was looking for but couldn't find. I remember that one too, though. He says, without going into all, what, I'm not on top of all the details of what's going on in Israel, because my bias is to defer to Israel. It's not for us to second guess everything, and I believe that broadly the IDF gets to decide what it wants to do, and they're broadly in the right, he claims. And that's the sort of perspective I come back to. And if I fall into the trap of arguing you on every detailed point, I would actually be conceding the broader issue that the Middle East should be micromanaged from Cambridge. And I think that's just simply absurd. And so I'm not going to concede that point. Sources from the Israel Defense IDF told magazine back in April that military personnel ignored Lavender's AI 10% false positive rate. By the way, Lavender is supported by Palantir. And that using the technology with little human input initially targeted alleged militants in their homes with unguided dumb bombs, despite an increased likelihood of civilian harm. So this is some of the problems that we're dealing with to begin with. And, as we continue on, the other thing that I really began to look at is Palantir Technologies and their specific ability to track and target individuals labeled as anti-Semites. However, several indirect pieces of information and patterns suggest a plausible framework where such surveillance could occur, particularly under the broader umbrella. This is what I discovered of national security and terrorism, and that's what Israel is using is those types of terminology. Uh, and so I pulled up this article from Sputnik just to make that case in point here. Israeli government announces plan to surveil and deport BDS activists. An escalation of tactics against the pro-Palestinian boycott, divest, and sanctions BDS movement. The Israeli government has announced a new program that will track and deport people who support or are involved with the organization. Interior Ministry Arderi, a strategic affairs minister, Gilad Erdan, unveiled the program on Sunday, saying that the government task force would begin gathering intelligence on pro-Palestinian organizations and activists with the intent of collecting information to have them legally deported. So Derry said, we have responsibility to all we can to crush the boycott and to say clearly that we will not allow the state of Israel to be harmed. But yet it's okay for Israel to call for boycotts and to sanctions for the United States and influence them to do all this to other companies and countries around the world there. So, Israel, especially under certain administrations, has defined, as in my notes here, delegitimate, I can't even say the word, delegitimizing the efforts, including the BDS, activism, criticizing Zionism, or forms of anti-Israel speech as potential security threats. According to the Israeli intelligence agencies, such as Shin Bet, have surveilled activists abroad and domestically under such frameworks. They had passed a law in 2017 that allowed the state to bar entry to individuals who publicly support BDS or consider threats due to their political views. So this is becoming continually insane, to say the very least there. I want to share with you, though, especially when we're looking at the anti-Semitism part of this. This is former Mossad agent that actually spoke on C-SPAN about Israel using anti-Semitism as a tactic to silence, in this case, journalists, but they're also doing this now to civilians. Listen in.
I had my second book. I had a record with my second book. I think my first book sold something around the world, close to 8 million copies. My second book was not reviewed in any newspaper in North America. Now that's a record. None. No, I'm sorry. I think the guy in the Phoenix Gazette and the people from B'nai B'rith walked in and asked for him to resign. Yeah, because he's an anti-Semite. Now, I know what they do because I used to ask them to do it. I mean, when I was in the Mossad and we had a guy that gave us problems in the U.S., and he was speaking out, and he was talking like Pete talked once and said, Israel is bombing Lebanon with cluster bombs. We say, hey, who's that guy? You know, Pete Makaki, we used to call him. Yeah, which is Pete the cockroach. Because he makes a lot of noise and you can't get rid of him. So what you do is you get in touch with a guy in the station in New York or in the station in Washington. You say, tell the guys at B'nai B'rith to label him. And of course the campaign starts, and before you know it, the guy's labeled. And he's an anti-Semite. Because...
And NBC did a hit piece as well on us over my father-in-law's death and falsely accused me of being a flat earther and said that as the DA lied to them, because of that, I'm not a credible witness. They run into all kinds of problems, though, because the more you lie, the more that's going to catch up with you. Palantir, by the way, their data integration and surveillance across platforms of the social media is unsurpassed by anybody. They predictive modeling the flags individuals for further scrutiny based on behavior or affiliations. In theory, if Israel integrates Palantir into systems tracking the anti-Israel, anti-Zionist activity, it could be used to flag activists, journalists, or other critics of Israeli policies. Israel collaborates closely with Western intelligence, and activists have claimed their political views have resulted in travel bans, visa denials, targeted smear campaigns, online censorship, especially on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, often via third-party monitoring tools. If Palantir is used in the ecosystem, it could support data analysis on individuals who fall under the anti-Semitism label, especially when conflated with when it's conflated with anti-Semitism. All right, that's just to give you some of these crazy things that they're capable of doing. But I want to go back to this original video, and I want to take you to 9 minutes and 37 seconds in. And this is where we get into when we're dealing with Trump becoming president. I think you're going to find this video very, very interesting, or this part of the video here very interesting. And notice on your screen, Palantir, because Palantir was on the big Trump campaign. Listen in.
After Trump was elected, the Trump administration is an ideal customer for what Palantir is selling. First, there are many former Palantir employees sprinkled across the Trump administration, from inside Doge to foreign policy advisors to high-level technology appointees. And Palantir co-founder Peter Thiel, heavily invested in the company, is also heavily invested in President Trump and Vice President Vance. He was a major campaign donor to both. Then the stated goal of Doge is to streamline and combine government data, which is exactly what Palantir does.
The ways that the government is defrauded is that the computer systems don't talk to each other.
And obviously, Karp is loving it.
Disruption, at the end of the day, exposes things that aren't working. There'll be ups and downs. There's a revolution. Some people can get their heads cut off. Like, it's like we're...
Did you hear that? Did you hear what Karp said right there? They're using this. Of course, they got Trump into power by doing this, but let's back up just a little bit. I want you to hear again what Karp said. All right, listen closely and think of the 7 Noahide laws and their penalties.
Exposes things that aren't working. There'll be ups and downs. There's a revolution. Some people can get their heads cut off. Like,
some people are going to get their heads cut off. Are you serious?
We're expecting to see really unexpected things and to win.
And what is winning?
It's a revolution. Some people can get their heads cut off.
They're going to get their heads cut off. No wonder. I can only imagine, right? Only imagine what would come next. The Middle East Eye, here's a good example of how they've been able to use Palantir to get people out of the way. UN report target of a smear campaign for denouncing the occupation, and that was none other than this young lady right here, Francesca Albanese, a UN special. Let me make sure you can see this large enough here for her. Reporter on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territories occupied since 1967 is undeterred by the recent Israeli campaigns accusing her of anti-Semitism for doing her job. This lady right here, right? Because she dared to tell the truth. This is neither the first nor the last time my mandate of persona will come under attack, Albanese told Middle East Eye. An apartheid regime the international legal framework acknowledges may resort to persecution of persons and organizations opposing it. Since assuming her role in May of 2022, Albanese has faced significant opposition from the Israeli right wing for her remarks of the Israel-Palestinian conflict as part of her job as a UN repertoire. She has named and shamed Israel for human rights abuses, including the crime of apartheid and operating as a settler colonial state. all of which are true. In December, the Israeli government Hasbara platform ACTL launched a campaign calling for her dismissal. This was followed by a similar petition on change.org. Between the 9th and 12th of April, multiple articles were published in several outlets, including the Times of Israel, World Israel News, Washington Free Beacon, Jewish News Syndicate, European Jew Press, the Israel Post, and the Foreign Desk, accusing Albanese of anti-Semitism. Just like the former Mossad Mossad guy here says here, in his video here, they target you. Victor here, Polanski. I think that's his last name. No, I'm sorry. His last name is not Polanski. Sorry about that. It is.
And he's an anti-Semite. Because that's what we say he is. And that's one stain you cannot wash.
See there? You can't wash it off. Once they stain you with that, you got it. And everybody wants to get away from you. Israeli group claims it is using back channels to censor inflammatory content. Another thing that I was looking at is Shin Bet, or Shabak in Hebrew, in Israel's internal security agencies akin to the FBI in the U.S. Shin Bet's operational scope has indeed expanded beyond Israel's border, especially in cyberspace. The cyber intelligence Shin Bet increasingly operates in the digital realm, tracking threats in real time across social media, encrypted apps, and digital communications, both sides, inside and outside Israel. The preemptive threat monitoring, much like the U.S. pre-crime models post 9/11, Shin Bet has shifted to predictive and preventive frameworks, flagging individuals based not only on actions, but on potential affiliation, speech, or influence. Think about that, right? Just think about just how much they can do to you. So, let's go back one more thing here. Let me first get into this here real quick. They're using these back channels of censorship. The linked article is about a group called An Iron Truth, made up of volunteers from Israel's tech sector who are working to remove content they say does not belong on platforms like Facebook, TikTok. The project's Monkeyer is similar to the Israeli military's Iron Dome rocket interception system and claims to remove slightly over 1,000 posts across platforms such as X, YouTube, and TikTok. It has been flagged by a few thousand participants as fight against falsehood and fight for public opinion. It's not against falsehood. It's to be able to maintain the dominance of Zionism. And unfortunately, unless you change the minds and get the people to recognize in the Christian community that this Zionist movement has been something that people have been duped by since the very beginning, when they did the Schofield Bible and Darby and them began to put out this propaganda that Israel was to be a state again. When Jesus said there would not be one stone left upon another, brought down for his murder. But no, they don't change a single bit in the world. So it's really becoming a nightmare in what we're seeing in real time today. Meta's broken promises also, this article here, between October and November of 2023, Human Rights Watch documented over 1,050 takedowns and other suppressions of content on Instagram and Facebook that have been posted by Palestinians and their supporters, including about human rights abuses. Human Rights Watch publicly solicited cases of any type, online censorship of any type of viewpoints related to Israel and Palestine. Of the 1,050 cases reviewed by this report, 1,049 involved peaceful content in support of Palestine that was censored and otherwise unduly suppressed. That was just mild content, and every single one of them, save one, was suppressed. So, Palantir is also acting, by the way, as a bridge between Israeli military intelligence entities and global intelligence networks, not just as a contractor, but as an enabler of multinational surveillance collaborations. And giving you a breakdown, the CIA, NSA, FBI, and the DoD, Palantir was originally funded by the CIA's venture arm, In-Q-Tel, and remains deeply embedded in the U.S. and Federal Intelligence Agency defense and law enforcement operations. Israeli agencies like Shin Bet, Mossad, and Unit 8200 have long maintained tight back-channel cooperation with these same U.S. institutions, particularly in counterterrorism, cyber security, monitoring domestic extremism, or anti-Semitism globally. Palantir acts as the shared software architect that allows smoother data fusion and intelligence sharing between these parties. Even the UK, the Five Eyes Alliance with the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand often shares data and platforms. Through Palantir, Israel can plug into these networks more easily, especially via cyber intelligence channels. Palantir has major contracts with European intelligence and law enforcement, such as Germany's Bundeswehr, and France's Interior Ministry. Israeli intelligence can align or exchange select data with these partners, especially regarding radical political activity, religious fundamentalism, or cyber threats. Religious fundamentalism? Why do you think people I don't even go into it. There's so many. Rick Wiles, for example, he's leaving the news now. He's been targeted and shadow banned so much now because of his outspoken views, and nobody cares to listen. Palantir is official NATO contractor. Israel, while not a NATO member, is a close NATO partner and often participates in joint operations and intelligence exchanges under that particular framework as well. So this gets deeper and deeper, and I haven't even touched half of what I've got here gathered together on this. The data pooling that goes on, behavioral targeting that goes on, predictive policy at the global scale. With Palantir's and all enhanced tools, agencies can preemptively intervene in the lives of individuals across the borders without due process or transparency. Covert watch lists, individuals or groups labeled as security risk by one state, such as anti-Israel extremists, can end up flagged across multiple allied systems, even if they committed no crime. This is getting very dangerous. It is a new world order system. Israel's Unit 8200 has birthed many private cybersecurity firms that partner with or supply data pipelines to platforms like Palantir. Some of these include NSO Group, Kandura, and Celebrite. And like I said, it just continued to go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Now, one of my biggest issues that I had, and this is where I'm going to kind of wrap things up with you, but let me first go ahead and go play this other part here before I get into it, and that's going to be protection of what I call the assassins for Palantir. Let's take a look at this part here I call this government control, 1357 in the video here, and let me get to that spot.
And here's Alex Karp in 2009 on civil liberties with regards to Palantir's work.
The central question, in my view, of civil liberties is how, it's not if the government has data, because let's assume the government has as much data as a health insurance company. It's how is that data being used? Is it being used in a way that's lawful? Meaning, do they have the right to use it? And is it being migrated into places it's not allowed to be used? We allow the enforcement of rules that government ought to enforce. And by the way, my experience is they want to enforce, or at the very least know they need to enforce. And if it's framed in that way, then you can have what is the ultimate Silicon Valley solution.
One co-founder openly wants to use the power of the tech industry to affect politics. The other wants his company to have oversight over how the government data they're paid to handle is used.
And the founders of Palantir will retain control in the company no matter what, through an obscure ownership structure. Their Class F shares grant them 49.99% of voting power, even if they collectively own as little as 6% of the company.
At the start of this journey, I was extremely afraid for the repercussions of this writing, of speaking out, but now I'm like, even more convinced that this is absolutely necessary.
We can't replace our current broken system with...
Big Brother's definitely got his hands, and he's got them around our necks is where he has it. So one of the biggest issues that I was wondering is whether or not Palantir's technology can also be used to protect those individuals that carry out, well, we'll just say the hit squad, kind of like Israel. Israel and their military, or Ukraine and their military, were targeting individuals or groups or whatever the case may be to, as in one case, when they talk about tracking down and killing Osama bin Laden, he ultimately admits to, yes, they did. Now, most people would admit, well, Osama bin Laden was a bad guy. But what about all the children that are targeted in Gaza? What happens there? What about if they're targeting you because you said something against Israel and now you're the anti-Semite? What if you become a very vocal voice all the time and then they use the technology to track you, figure out what you're going to say next, and decide to have someone take you out, like in the case of our family here, to stop your voice from continuing, period? What about immunity? Do they have the ability to reach out and make sure that law enforcement, DAs, judges, and everyone else in between covers your back so that you can officially remove the threats? Well, I looked into that. And even though Palantir is not just a data analytics platform, it's Palantir absolutely can be used to protect evil agendas. If the system is weaponized for political or clandestine purposes, and there is growing concern in the privacy and intelligence communities that this is already happening, particularly in the cases where national security is used to override justice, transparency, or accountability. So, what can Palantir actually do? Profile targets? Well, keep in mind. Let me back up just for a moment. It's not just a data analytics platform. It's an intelligence fusion system. It connects massive data sets across law enforcement, military, banking, telecom, health, and social media sectors. That means they can profile targets and protect assets, flagging someone as a protected person within its network. Direct information flow, ensuring certain data is not surfaced to DAs, judges, or law enforcement. Direct information flow, ensuring certain data is not surfaced, I already said that, flag prosecutors or judges for risk if they begin investigating someone with protected status. That would really seem interesting. When after two pathologists deemed my father-in-law's death a homicide, one of them even demanding a federal investigation. Every judge, lawyer, DA, and attorney across 3 states were silenced. Flag prosecutions or judges for risk if they investigate someone with protected status. Connection, influence, networks. Who knows whom in law enforcement, politics, judiciary, allowing agencies to exert pressure behind the scenes. Control narrative intelligence. If an asset commits a crime, the system can minimize visibility, generate counter narratives, and redirect law enforcement's attention elsewhere. It doesn't end there. Now, giving you an example, a protected assassin, a covert operative, carries out a hit on a potential figure or activist. Palantir system scrubs their travel, social media communications, or biometric links from connected databases. I've seen that firsthand myself. If a local prosecutor or judge begins to investigate, Palantir's Blackens analytics may flag that investigation as a national security risk. Higher level agencies, CIA, FBI, Shin Bet, can then intervene quietly, possibly warning off the judge or pressuring them legally or politically. Case number 2, steering judicial outcomes. Prosecutors, judges rely on case files, databases, and criminal intel networks, all of which can be filtered or enriched by Palantir's system. If someone is politically inconvenient or agency wants them shielded, false data, omissions, or protective flags can be inserted, making prosecution extremely difficult. Conversely, as an incentive, persons could be framed more easily with cherry-picked or algorithm-linked evidence. I feel like I'm reading the very things that we have already dealt with. So, covert intricacies protections. Israeli assets in the U.S. flagged as do not investigate due to foreign intelligence relationships. Data compartmentalization. Only selected agents or divisions are allowed to see certain evidence, keeping others blind. Narrative reinforcement. Media outlets, NGOs, or even activist groups could unknowingly repeat manipulated conclusions generated by the trustworthy data pipelines. This is the type of information that they have. This is the type of abilities that they have. And this is what we're fighting against. I'm Stephen Benoon. You're watching Israeli News Live. Look, if our information is a blessing to you, I didn't even finish it, but I don't want to keep wearing you guys out with all this information. If it blesses you in some way and you want to support the work we do, we certainly could use your help. Please consider donating. That's another thing Palantir is able to do, is to make sure you don't want to support us. Let's show them a thing or two. That people still have a right to make their own decisions. Our website, IsraeliNewsLive.org. You can donate directly online or by mail. Stephen Benoon, P.O. Box 156, Sunbright, Tennessee 37872. Thank you for those of you that have helped us to gather funds to pay the computer off that we purchased here. We greatly appreciate it. And that was really a blessing that people did come together to help us to achieve that. Thank you. And thank you for your continued support, because it definitely is costly to be able to do the work that we do. God bless you and have a good day.